On March 26, 2026, Venus moves into Aries and stays there until April 19th. It's important to highlight that these interpretations are based on Sidereal or Vedic Astrology, which considers a roughly 24-degree variance from the tropical zodiac. Venus is the planet of love, beauty, desire, relationships, money, art, and the things that make life feel worth living. It governs how we attract and are attracted to others, how we spend our resources, how we create and appreciate beauty, and the quality of harmony we are able to sustain in our personal and professional relationships. When Venus is strong and well-placed, life tends to feel more fluid and pleasurable. When it is under pressure, love becomes complicated, finances get murky, and the things we desire feel either out of reach or unsatisfying once we have them. Aries is a fire sign ruled by Mars. It is bold, direct, initiating, and impatient. It does not wait, it does not soften the truth, and it does not do things halfway. Aries energy is about going first, about acting on instinct, about the courage to begin something without knowing exactly how it will end. When Venus, which naturally prefers comfort, harmony, and gradual approach, moves into the fierce and fast-moving sign of Aries, the result is a version of Venus that is more direct, more impulsive, and considerably more willing to take risks in love and in life. During this transit, the energy around relationships becomes more honest and less patient. People are more likely to say what they feel directly rather than hinting around it. Romantic attractions that develop during this period tend to feel immediate and genuine. If there is something you have wanted to express to someone, Venus in Aries removes the hesitation. The downside of that same energy is that impulsiveness in love can lead to decisions made in the heat of the moment that require more careful thought. The passion that Aries brings to Venus is real, but so is the tendency to act before fully thinking things through. Being aware of that pattern gives you the advantage of acting with courage without completely abandoning practical consideration. Financially, Venus in Aries brings bold desires and an increased willingness to spend, invest, or take a calculated risk. There is more entrepreneurial energy in the air during this transit, a pull towards starting something new rather than maintaining something old. Creative projects that have been sitting on the back burner can find real momentum. Artistic work, particularly anything with a strong personal voice or a pioneering quality, benefits from this combination of Venusian creativity and Aries initiative. The caution here is the same as it is in love. Venus in Aries can make financial risks feel more appealing than they actually are. Acting on genuine opportunity is excellent. Acting on impatience alone is less so. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries and becomes exalted. The Sun reaches its maximum dignity and strength in Aries. It conjoins Venus in this sign. This is a genuinely powerful alignment. The exalted Sun brings authority, clarity of purpose, and a strong quality of personal leadership to whatever it touches. When it lands on Venus in Aries, it amplifies desire, heightens personal confidence, and creates a window where the things people want to initiate, whether in love, creative work, or professional life, carry extra force and visibility. This is the peak of the entire Venus transit. Anything important that you have been building toward during the full transit window comes to a natural culmination in these final days. The broader planetary picture during this Venus transit also deserves attention. Saturn is moving through Pisces throughout this period, and it brings a sobering and disciplined undercurrent to the otherwise bold and optimistic energy of Venus in Aries. Saturn in Pisces asks for patience and long-term thinking, and its presence during this transit is a reminder that while Venus in Aries is encouraging bold moves, the most lasting results come from bold moves that are also grounded in reality. Mars itself, the ruler of Aries and therefore the background ruler of this entire Venus transit, moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn there. This is significant because it means the planet ruling the sign Venus is transiting becomes somewhat constrained in Pisces, which can create a subtle friction between the desire to act boldly in love or finances and the actual circumstances on the ground requiring more patience and care than the Aries energy would prefer. Mercury also moves into Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding a further note of caution around communication, agreements, and contracts in the second half of this transit. The enthusiasm and confidence that Venus in Aries and the exalted Sun are producing during mid-April need to be balanced with careful attention to detail, particularly in any situation involving written agreements, financial commitments, or important conversations. Jupiter in Gemini provides a stabilizing and expansive background support throughout, offering a quality of wisdom and optimism that helps channel the more impulsive Aries energy productively. Venus represents love and activities that bring joy. As Venus transits through different houses for approximately 25 days, it signifies an increased inclination towards activities associated with that specific house. The final outcomes may vary based on the dignity of Venus in the birth chart, but the common thread is an affinity towards engagements related to the house Venus is currently transiting. Venus primarily influences the Moon and Mercury and is relatively susceptible to the influence of malefic planets such as the Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. To accurately assess the impact of these transits, it is crucial to consider your Ascendant and Moon signs. The Ascendant sign offers insights into the timing of life events, while the Moon sign reveals how you will emotionally respond to these changes. Take into account the position of your current Mahadasha Lord in your birth chart, as it can shed light on how these transits will influence the recurring themes of your current Dasha period. This transit may manifest differently for each individual, and how they navigate this transit will depend on their personal charts. A more precise understanding of the impact of this transit can be gained by examining Venus's Ashtaka score in Aries. Keep in mind that the effects of this transit are contingent on Venus's interaction with the planets in individual birth charts. It's also worth noting that individuals currently experiencing the influence of Venus Dasha may feel the effects of this transit more intensely. To understand how this transit may affect you based on your zodiac sign and the houses it transits, let's delve into those specifics. For Aries, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and stays until April 19th, moving through your first house, the house of self, physical body, personality, and the impression you leave on others. For Aries individuals, Venus is no ordinary planet. It rules your second house of wealth and speech, and your seventh house of marriage and partnerships. So when Venus walks through your own sign, it is carrying the energy of love and money right into your personal identity. That combination is worth paying attention to. From the moment this transit begins, there is a noticeable shift in how you carry yourself. You become more appealing without necessarily trying. The sharp edges that Aries is known for soften just enough to draw people toward you rather than push them away. People respond to you warmly, conversations flow more naturally, and social situations feel easier. This is Venus doing its job in the first house. It is not changing who you are. It is simply helping you project the best version of yourself. Romantically, this transit opens one of the better windows of your year. Since Venus rules your seventh house while sitting in your first, there is a direct and powerful link between your personal magnetism and your relationships. If you are single, your attractiveness to potential partners increases and genuine romantic possibilities can present themselves through everyday encounters. If you are in a committed relationship, expect real warmth and renewed closeness. The desire to be affectionate, to appreciate your partner, and be appreciated in return, feels natural and uncomplicated during this period. Small acts of attention land more deeply than usual. On the financial side, Venus ruling your second house while transiting your first house means that your personal presence and how you present yourself can directly translate into money. Fields connected to beauty, design, art, entertainment, food, fashion, or any work where your personality is part of the product will benefit most. There is also a real pull to spend on yourself during this transit, on your appearance, your comfort, or things that make your daily life more beautiful. Some of that is healthy. Just keep a loose eye on the balance because this transit does have a tendency to spend money more. The significant shift within this Venus transit comes on April 14th, when the Sun enters Aries and becomes exalted. This is where things get genuinely powerful. From April 14th to April 19th, you have both Venus and the exalted Sun sitting together in your first house. The Sun is at its absolute strongest in Aries, and it lands right beside of Venus in your sign. Your personal presence during this window is hard to ignore. You come across as both charismatic and authoritative at the same time, which is a rare combination. If you have been waiting for the right moment to put yourself forward, make an important request, start something significant, or simply step into a role that demands confidence, this is the window. That said, the Sun and Venus together in the first house carry a mild caution worth mentioning. The Sun is about ego and self-focus. When it sits closely with Venus here, there can be a subtle tendency to be more self-oriented in your personal relationships, to take up more space without fully realizing it. Your partner or close ones may feel slightly sidelined even when that is not your intention. A little awareness goes a long way. The overall energy is empowering, but the people important to you still need to feel valued. Saturn is sitting in Pisces, your 12th house, and that placement creates a quiet undercurrent of fatigue or hidden pressure running beneath the surface of this transit. You might feel more socially vibrant on the outside while something quieter pulls at you from within. Expenses may also be more persistent than expected during this period. The 12th house asks for conservation of energy, so even as Venus brightens your outer life, honor that inner call to rest and restore. Mars, your chart ruler, moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 12th house. This is where the energy behind the scenes gets more complex. Mars in the 12th with Saturn can create restless sleep, drained physical energy, hidden conflicts, or money leaking in ways that are hard to track. The personal brightness of Venus in your first house is real, but the 12th house cluster of Mars and Saturn is quietly pulling in the other direction. Watch your spending carefully in April and avoid unnecessary confrontations that serve no clear purpose. Mercury moves into Pisces on April 11th, debilitated, adding to that 12th house group. Private communications and behind-the-scenes matters may get murkier. Paperwork, agreements, or sensitive conversations handled in private need extra care during this window. Get things in writing and review before committing. Jupiter in Gemini sits in your 3rd house throughout this transit, supporting your courage, initiative, and communication skills. It is a steady, positive background influence that gives you quiet confidence in your own abilities even as the 12th house creates pressure from behind the scenes. Overall, this Venus transit is genuinely good for you. It activates your personal magnetism, improves your relationships, and connects your self-expression to love and money in meaningful ways. The lesson underneath it is that the 12th house planets remind you to balance outward energy with inward care. You do not need to chase everything during this period. Some of the best things will come to you because of how Venus is working through your first house. For Taurus, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 12th house until April 19th. For Taurus individuals, Venus is your own ruling planet. It also governs your 6th house of health, debts, daily work, and competition. When your ruling planet transits the 12th house, the experience has a particular depth. The 12th house governs expenses, foreign connections, spirituality, sleep, isolation, hidden matters, and the spaces of life that exist away from ordinary public view. This is not a transit that works loudly or visibly. It works quietly, beneath the surface. When Venus moves through your 12th house, desires turn private. You may not openly express what you want from relationships or from life, yet internally there is a strong longing for emotional connection, intimacy, and beauty. Existing relationships may feel more emotionally layered during this period. There is a pull toward deeper vulnerability, toward saying things that usually stay unsaid. If you are in a committed relationship, that depth can be a gift if you allow it to bring you closer. If it stays unspoken, it creates distance. If you are single, the 12th house Venus tends to attract connections that are complicated in some way. Someone emotionally unavailable, someone from a different country or background, or someone met through a private or unusual circumstance. These connections feel significant but may carry complexity. Take your time before making emotional investments in anything that begins during this transit. The 12th house does not always deliver straightforward romance. Financially, the 12th house Venus is associated with spending rather than earning. Since Venus also rules your 6th house, some of those expenses may connect to health, medical care, or looking after someone you love. Purchases related to comfort, spiritual retreats, beauty, or travel are also possible. Some of that spending will feel entirely justified. Just make sure it is deliberate rather than emotionally driven in a moment of longing. The most genuinely useful expression of Venus in your 12th house is creative and spiritual. If you write, make music, paint, or work in any field that draws from imagination and intuition, this period can be one of your most inspired. The 12th house connects you to the subconscious, and Venus here acts like a channel to something beautiful and deeper than ordinary thinking. Solitude becomes productive rather than lonely during this transit. Give yourself the quiet space to create, and you may be surprised by what emerges. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 12th house. The Sun in the 12th house generally brings a quality of working in the background, of doing meaningful work that goes unacknowledged, or of feeling somewhat invisible. Because the Sun is exalted here, the inner quality and strength of your efforts during this period are genuinely high, even if external recognition is slow to arrive. Do not be discouraged by a lack of visible results in mid to late April. The foundation being laid through quiet effort now carries more dignity than it appears to. If travel is on the table, this period carries good energy for going somewhere far, especially for a reason connected to personal renewal or a private matter. Saturn is in Pisces, your 11th house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn in the 11th house means that easy gains are unlikely during this period. What comes through sustained effort and not through shortcuts. Your social circle may feel smaller or more purposeful than usual. Income tends to arrive steadily rather than in windfalls. This Saturn placement means the 11th house is working slowly and honestly, which shapes the backdrop of this whole Venus transit. The romanticism and beauty that Venus in the 12th house can produce are tempered by a practical, somewhat restricted outer world. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 11th house. This shift can create tension in friendships, friction in social networks, or frustration with how slowly financial gains are moving. The combination of Mars and Saturn in the 11th house together is not comfortable, and it directly affects the social dimension of this Venus transit. Where Venus in the 12th might otherwise draw you toward meaningful private connections, the 11th house pressure from Mars and Saturn can make the social environment around you more charged and less supportive of that gentle inward movement. Mercury follows into Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding confusion to financial expectations and friend-related communication. Be cautious about financial commitments or group-related decisions. Jupiter in Gemini sits in your 2nd house, providing a genuinely positive background support for your finances and family over the longer term. It does not cancel the 12th house spending tendencies of this Venus transit, but it does provide a stabilizing optimism about your material foundations. The sense that things will work out financially over time is supported by Jupiter in the 2nd house, even when the short-term picture during this transit feels tight. Overall, this Venus transit calls you inward. It is a period of depth, private experience, and meaningful quiet work. Relationships and finances need conscious handling. The exalted Sun joining Venus after April 14th brings inner strength and quiet dignity even if outer recognition is slow. The 11th house cluster of Saturn, Mars, and Mercury creates social and financial friction that requires patience. Use this transit for rest, creative inspiration, and private preparation. What you build inside yourself during this quieter window becomes material when Venus moves forward. For Gemini, Venus transits Aries from March 26th to April 19th, moving through your 11th house. The 11th house is the house of gains, income beyond your primary profession, social networks, elder siblings, hopes, and the fulfillment of wishes. It is one of the more favored houses in astrology, and having Venus move through it tends to produce tangible, enjoyable results. For Gemini individuals, Venus rules your 5th house of romance, creativity, children, and speculation, as well as your 12th house of expenses and foreign connections. From the start of this transit, your social life picks up. You feel more connected to your networks, more drawn to engaging with people around you, and more naturally appealing to those you meet. There is a warmth and ease in how you move through social settings that draws people toward you without effort. New connections made during this time tend to have a genuinely positive quality, whether they are professional, personal, or somewhere in between. Some of what begins in this social window can evolve into something meaningful in the months ahead. Since Venus also rules your 5th house, the transit through the 11th creates a direct connection between romance and your social circle. If you are single, a romantic connection is quite possible through your network, through friends, or through a group gathering. This is one of the more natural and unforced romantic possibilities of your year. The 11th house brings people together through shared interests, and Venus in this house makes those encounters feel genuinely pleasant. If you are already in a relationship, you and your partner may enjoy more time together in social settings, and that shared enjoyment can reinvigorate the connection. Financially, Venus in your 11th house directly activates income and gains. Fields connected to art, beauty, design, entertainment, or creative work may see stronger financial returns during this period. There is also a quality of gains coming through people rather than through formal or institutional channels. Pay attention to who reaches out to you and what opportunities surface through conversations. The 11th house operates largely through connections and networks, and Venus here makes those channels particularly productive. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 11th house. This is a genuinely strong window for recognition, authority within your networks, and meaningful connections with influential people. The exalted sun in the 11th house brings a quality of being seen and valued by the right people. You may receive acknowledgement for previous efforts, a financial reward that reflects sustained work, or a connection with someone in a position to open important doors. This period is potent. Pay attention to who reaches out and what surfaces. This is not a time to be passive. One thing worth noting with the Sun and Venus conjunction in your 11th house: the exalted sun shines brightly and can sometimes carry a quality of wanting appreciation without fully reciprocating in social situations. You may come across as more self-oriented even when that is not your intention. Keep your generosity in social settings consistent with the warmth you are projecting outward, and you will get more out of this conjunction than if you let the ego dimension of the exalted sun take over. Saturn is in Pisces, your 10th house, throughout this entire Venus transit. This is a long and significant career transit that brings discipline and methodical accountability to your professional life. It means that even as Venus in the 11th creates social ease and income momentum, your career environment is demanding sustained, high-quality work without shortcuts. The recognition you want professionally will come, but Saturn in the 10th insists it arrives through genuine merit rather than charm alone. The 11th house gains Venus produces are real, but they are most durable when backed by the steady professional effort Saturn is requiring in the 10th. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 10th house. This sharpens the pressure at work. There may be conflicts with authority figures, a heavier workload than expected, or a competitive professional environment that requires real energy to navigate. Mars in the 10th with Saturn is demanding but also productive if channeled correctly. It gives you the drive to push through professional challenges that Saturn alone might make feel too slow. The tension between the social ease of Venus in the 11th and the intense work pressure from Mars and Saturn in the 10th is the central dynamic of this transit. Find a way to show up fully at work while still allowing Venus to work in your social and income life. Mercury moves into Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, joining Mars and Saturn in your 10th house. Professional communication requires extra care. Unclear messaging, misunderstood instructions, or poorly worded commitments at work can create complications. Jupiter is in Gemini, your first house, throughout this period. This is one of the most supportive positions possible for you. Jupiter in the first house brings confidence, optimism, and a natural quality of expansion to your personality and overall life approach. It gives you the trust in yourself to act on the social and financial opportunities Venus in the 11th is producing. It also acts as a genuine stabilizing force when the 10th house pressure from Saturn and Mars gets heavy. Lean into Jupiter's first house wisdom throughout this transit. It is quietly working in your favor in a way that only becomes more obvious in retrospect. Overall, this Venus transit through your 11th house is one of the more favorable periods of the year for you. Social momentum, romantic possibilities, and financial gains are all active. The exalted sun joining Venus in mid-April elevates your visibility and authority within your networks. This is a period where charm, ambition, and genuine personal presence can translate into lasting gains when directed with intention. For Cancer, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 10th house until April 19th. The 10th house is career, public reputation, authority, and the way the world sees you through your professional standing. When Venus moves through this house, it brings a social and appealing quality to your professional life. For Cancer individuals, Venus rules your 4th house of home, mother, and property, as well as your 11th house of income, gains, and social networks. From the moment Venus enters your 10th house, your professional visibility increases. You become more appealing to colleagues, clients, and people in authority. There is a natural diplomacy and ease in how you handle professional interactions, which can lead to new collaborations, recognition for your work, or a noticeable improvement in your relationship with those who hold influence over your career. Creative fields, hospitality, public relations, beauty, design, and entertainment are where Venus in the 10th shines most brightly. But it benefits virtually any professional who needs to present themselves well, negotiate, or build relationships through warmth and competence. Since Venus rules your 11th house of gains while transiting the 10th house of career, this transit has a direct and productive financial dimension. Income through your profession is highlighted. New clients, a better fee arrangement, a bonus, or a project that pays well are all real possibilities. Importantly, The 11th house quality means that gains often arrive through people rather than institutions during this period. Your professional connections, your industry network, and the genuine goodwill you generate through competent, charming work will be the actual vehicle through which financial opportunity arrives. Be open and engaged in those conversations. The 4th house that Venus also rules brings a quiet but meaningful thread to this transit. Work from home arrangements may feel especially harmonious right now. Creative or professional ideas that emerge from a domestic or private setting may turn out to be more valuable than you expected. The link between your home environment and your career identity is being gently aligned by Venus, and paying attention to that connection could produce something unexpectedly fruitful during this period. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 10th house. This is possibly the most career-significant window of the year for Cancer individuals. The Sun is the planet of authority and public standing, and when exalted in Aries, it carries peak strength. Landing in your 10th house of career alongside Venus, which has already been warming up your professional environment since March 26th, the Sun's arrival on April 14th elevates everything. You become simultaneously more authoritative and more likable, which is a rare and genuinely powerful professional combination. If there is a request to make, a presentation to deliver, a role to step into, or a decision maker to impress, do it in this window. This period is not one to sit on. The combination of the exalted Sun and Venus in your 10th house also makes public appearances, professional events, and visible moments in your career particularly productive. Your Cancer warmth combined with Venusian charm and solar authority creates an impression that is both approachable and commanding. Be visible during this window. Let the work you have been doing speak through how you carry yourself in professional settings. Saturn is in Pisces, your 9th house, throughout this Venus transit. This placement puts a serious, disciplined tone on your belief systems, long-distance travel, and relationship with a father figure or mentor. For the most part, Saturn in the 9th house is a quiet, background influence during this transit, but it does mean that anything requiring travel or involving your larger philosophical or legal frameworks moves slowly and requires genuine effort. The good news is that the career momentum Venus is producing in the 10th house does not depend heavily on the 9th house theme Saturn is slowly working through. These run in parallel without directly blocking each other. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 9th house. This combination can create some heat around beliefs, possible friction with a father figure or mentor, or frustrated travel plans. More practically, Mars and Saturn in the 9th house together can create impatience around things that take longer than expected, especially things that require third-party approval, institutional movement, or someone at a distance. Keep that impatience in check. The career wins available through Venus and the exalted Sun in your 10th house are accessible without needing the 9th house to cooperate smoothly. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, joining Mars and Saturn in your 9th house. This adds some risk of unclear or incomplete information around travel, legal matters, or communications with someone at a distance. If you are working on any agreement or arrangement that involves a foreign contact or legal dimension, be thorough and careful with the details. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 12th house, throughout this transit. Jupiter in the 12th can bring a quiet expansiveness to your inner life, spiritual interests, and connections with people or places at a distance. It can also produce spending, particularly on travel, spiritual activities, or behind-the-scenes matters. For this Venus transit, Jupiter in the 12th house is a background influence that mostly operates beneath the main story. It does not significantly amplify or block what Venus and the exalted Sun are doing in your 10th house. Just be mindful of expenses that feel spiritually or personally justified, as the 12th house Jupiter can make them feel more necessary than they are. Overall, this Venus transit through your 10th house is one of the strongest career and reputation periods of your year. The window, when the exalted Sun joins Venus in your 10th house, is a peak moment for professional authority and public recognition. Step into visibility with confidence. The work you have been building deserves to be seen right now. For Leo, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 9th house until April 19th. The 9th house is one of the most naturally auspicious houses in the chart. It governs luck, fortune, higher wisdom, long-distance travel, your relationship with a guru or mentor, your father, philosophy, and the larger blessings that flow through your life. When Venus moves through this house, it brings a gracious, expansive, and gently fortunate quality to daily life. For Leo individuals, Venus rules your 3rd house of communication, courage, and skill, as well as your 10th house of career and public reputation. The link between career progress and fortune becomes quietly but meaningfully active during this transit. From the start of this Venus transit, life has a slightly softer texture. Obstacles do not disappear, but they seem less sharp. Opportunities arrive with less friction. There is an enjoyment of learning, of cultural exposure, of ideas that expand your understanding of the world. Long-distance travel is genuinely favored during this period, and any journey taken, whether for pleasure, work, or personal enrichment, tends to carry a quality of beauty or genuine meaning that makes it memorable. Short trips connected to cultural, artistic, or spiritual interests are particularly fitting for Venus in the 9th house. Since Venus rules your 10th house while transiting the 9th house of fortune, this is a period where career matters receive a quiet but real touch of grace. Things at work move more smoothly than usual. Opportunities arrive with less pushing required on your part. If you are in a creative field, a role involving communication or media, or any work connected to travel, education, or international affairs, Venus in the 9th house is particularly helpful. A meaningful professional connection made through a trip, a course, or an encounter with someone from a different background could also surface during this window. Your relationship with a teacher, mentor, or guiding philosophical tradition is also highlighted by this transit. Venus in the 9th house brings beauty and appreciation to your learning journey. You may reconnect with a teaching you love, discover a new perspective that genuinely resonates, or have an enriching conversation with someone whose wisdom you respect. These experiences accumulate quietly and contribute to a deeper personal sense of direction during this period. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 9th house. This is particularly significant for Leo individuals because the Sun is your own ruling planet. When the Sun becomes exalted in Aries and lands in your 9th house of fortune alongside Venus, it activates your fortune house with the full strength of your personal ruler. The conjunction of the exalted Sun and Venus in the 9th house from April 14th to April 19th is a luminous and genuinely fortunate window. Your confidence, your sense of life direction, and the feeling that the universe is cooperating with your efforts all intensify. Matters involving your father, a mentor, or a guiding figure in your life may come to the forefront in a positive way during this period. From a career perspective, the exalted Sun in the 9th house, ruling your 1st house of self, while Venus sits there ruling your 10th house of career, creates a natural three-way connection between who you are, what you believe in, and how that reflects in your professional life. This is an excellent window to put forward important ideas, begin an ambitious project, or make a decision that aligns your career path more closely with your actual values and vision. Activities connected to publishing, teaching, international work, or any profession with a higher purpose dimension benefit most from this Sun-Venus conjunction in the 9th house. Saturn is in Pisces, your 8th house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn in the 8th house is a demanding placement that operates quietly but persistently. Shared finances, joint assets, psychological depth, and matters requiring transformation all carry a slow, grinding quality during this period. For this particular Venus transit, Saturn in the 8th house means that the graceful fortune available through the 9th house comes alongside an ongoing undercurrent of complexity in shared financial or deeply personal matters. The 9th house blessings are real, but the 8th house asks you not to ignore what needs honest attention in the background. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 8th house. This is a combination that astrologers look at with care. It can bring sudden events, financial stress around shared resources, or intense psychological pressure. The good news is that Jupiter is in Gemini, your 11th house, providing genuine income and social support throughout this transit. Jupiter ruling your 5th and 8th houses while transiting the 11th means there are creative gains and financial flows from multiple sources that help offset the 8th house pressure. That 11th house Jupiter is a meaningful counterbalance to the Mars-Saturn combination. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th, debilitated, adding to the 8th house group. This can create confusion around shared finances, unclear communication in matters of joint assets or debt, or a tendency to overthink without arriving at clarity. Avoid signing or committing to financial agreements involving other people without thoroughly reviewing the details. Overall, this Venus transit through your 9th house is a period of grace, learning, and fortune for Leo individuals. Career matters are gently favored, travel carries genuine meaning, and your philosophical and spiritual life feels more alive. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th creates a peak window of confidence and purposeful direction that is rare and worth embracing fully. This is fundamentally a period of expansion and alignment, even as deeper transformations work themselves out in the background. For Virgo, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 8th house until April 19th. The 8th house is complex and layered. It governs transformation, hidden matters, secrets, research, shared finances, inheritance, the occult, sudden events, and the psychological depths that most people prefer not to examine too directly. When Venus moves through this house, it does not produce a surface-level or socially obvious experience. For Virgo individuals, Venus rules your 2nd house of wealth and family, as well as your 9th house of fortune and higher learning. The transit of Venus through the 8th house therefore connects accumulated wealth, family dynamics, and fortune to the hidden and transformative dimensions of life in a way that deserves careful attention. When Venus is in the 8th house, the energy of relationships turns inward and intensifies. There is less interest in casual socializing and more pull toward connections that are emotionally real and psychologically honest. Existing relationships can deepen during this period, moving past surface-level dynamics into something more genuine. Hidden feelings and unresolved emotional matters tend to surface when Venus transits the 8th house, whether you invite them or not. If there has been something left unsaid in an important relationship, this is likely when it finds its way out. From a financial perspective, Venus in the 8th house can bring income through sources beyond your regular work. Inheritance, a bonus, shared finances with a partner, investment returns, or insurance settlements can all be activated by Venus in the 8th. Since Venus rules your 2nd house of accumulated wealth while transiting the house of other people's resources, there is genuine potential for financial benefit through joint arrangements. However, be clear about what you are agreeing to. The 8th house does not reward carelessness in shared financial matters. The 9th house that Venus also rules brings a theme of fortune and deeper inquiry to this transit. You may find yourself drawn to research, to psychological or spiritual investigation, or to any form of study that requires going beneath the surface. Venus in the 8th house genuinely favors depth over breadth. Therapy, healing work, occult study, or simply allowing yourself to honestly examine your patterns can be both productive and transformative during this period. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 8th house. The Sun in the 8th house does not produce its most comfortable experience. The 8th house asks the Sun to operate in hidden and private spaces, which is not where solar energy naturally thrives. However, because the Sun is exalted here, it carries real inner strength and a quiet dignity even in a complex house position. This is not a time for public recognition or external achievement. It is a time for building inner authority and handling important matters with genuine thoroughness. Tax affairs, legal dealings, government-related matters, or situations involving bureaucracy may surface around April 14th. The exalted quality of the Sun means that engaging these matters with integrity tends to produce better outcomes than initially feared. The conjunction of Venus and the exalted Sun in the 8th house from April 14th to April 19th also brings a quality of quiet power to shared financial conversations. If you need to negotiate around joint assets, inheritance, and investment, or any financial matter involving another person, this window has real force behind it even if it does not announce itself loudly. Saturn is in Pisces, your 7th house, throughout this Venus transit. This long Saturn transit is asking your partnerships, both romantic and professional, to show up with real maturity and commitment. Partners may feel more demanding or duty-oriented than usual. The warmth and depth that Venus in the 8th house brings to relationships is genuine, but it operates through the lens of a 7th house Saturn that requires accountability and honest engagement. Do not mistake Saturn's seriousness in the 7th house for a sign that your relationships are struggling. It is asking them to grow up, not fall apart. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 7th house. This can introduce direct conflict or tension in close partnerships during the first 2 weeks of April. Arguments, power imbalances, or frustration with a partner who simultaneously pressures and holds back are possible. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, joining Mars and Saturn in the 7th house, which makes communication within close relationships less clear and more emotionally driven than logical. If an important relationship conversation needs to happen, be extra deliberate with your words and make sure you are genuinely listening, not just waiting to respond. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 10th house, throughout this period. Jupiter in the 10th house brings an expansive quality to your career during this whole window. There may be genuine growth, a wider scope of responsibility, or real recognition of your professional expertise. Since Jupiter rules your 4th and 7th houses while transiting the 10th, there is also a sense of how your emotional foundations and partnerships contribute to professional success. This Jupiter placement is a meaningful stabilizing force that provides career confidence and momentum, running alongside the more internally focused energy of Venus in the 8th house. Overall, this Venus transit through your 8th house is a period of depth and honest transformation. It asks for psychological honesty, financial clarity around shared resources, and genuine engagement with what lies beneath the surface. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th adds quiet inner authority and the possibility of significant movement in shared financial or deeply personal matters. Do the inner work this transit is asking for, and trust that it produces genuine change, even when the external results take time to arrive. For Libra, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 7th house until April 19th. The 7th house is the house of marriage, committed partnerships, business alliances, and the significant others in your life. For Libra individuals, Venus is your own ruling planet. It governs your 1st house of self and your 8th house of transformation and shared resources. When your own ruler transits the 7th house, the house directly opposite your 1st house, it creates a powerful and direct activation of your relationship axis. This is one of the most personally meaningful transits you can experience, and it is asking you to pay full and honest attention to your most important connections. From the moment Venus enters Aries in your 7th house, relationships come into sharp focus. The energy is romantic, warm, and partnership-oriented. If you are in a committed relationship, this period tends to bring genuine affection, a renewed quality of appreciation, and a desire to invest emotionally in your partnership. Small gestures, thoughtful conversations, and quality time together carry more emotional weight than usual. You may feel more openly loving during this transit, and your partner tends to respond to that in kind. If you are single, the 7th house Venus transit is one of the most favorable windows of the year for meeting someone genuinely significant. The connections made during this period carry a quality of authenticity and mutual attraction that is relatively rare. Be open to what presents itself without forcing it into a predetermined shape. Venus in the 7th house does not always deliver romance according to a familiar script, but what it does deliver tends to be real. Business partnerships and professional collaborations are also favored. Negotiations, contract discussions, and the formation of working alliances go more smoothly than usual during this period. Your diplomatic instincts are sharpest, and your ability to create arrangements that feel mutually beneficial is operating at its natural best. People are more inclined to say yes to you. Use that quality deliberately in any important professional negotiation during this window. Since Venus rules your 8th house while transiting the 7th, there is also a deeper, more vulnerable quality to relationships during this period. Conversations that go beneath the surface, honest emotional disclosures, and a willingness to be genuinely transparent with a partner are all possible. The 8th house connection can also bring a financial dimension to partnerships, whether that is a joint financial arrangement, a discussion about shared assets, or clarity around how your resources flow within a committed relationship. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 7th house. This conjunction brings a complex but ultimately powerful energy to your relationship axis. The exalted Sun in the 7th house means the other person in any significant pairing, whether romantic or professional, is carrying strong, authoritative, and confident energy during this window. In positive terms, this feels like genuine partnership with someone capable and purposeful. The combination of the exalted Sun and Venus in the 7th house also means that any important negotiation or partnership conversation happening around April 14th to 19th is charged with both charm and real force. Come prepared, know your position clearly, and trust that your natural Libra diplomacy is working in your favor. The caution with this conjunction is that the exalted Sun can tip relationship dynamics toward the other person feeling dominant or overpowering. You do not need to shrink for the other person to shine. Holding your own sense of self clearly during this window, while still honoring what the relationship genuinely needs, is the most productive way to navigate the Sun-Venus conjunction in your 7th house. Saturn is in Pisces, your 6th house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn in the 6th house brings discipline and steady management to your daily work, health routines, and competitive environment. For this transit, the 6th house Saturn means your daily responsibilities remain demanding even as Venus illuminates your 7th house with relational warmth. The balance between showing up for the people in your life and keeping up with daily work obligations is a real tension during this period. Neither suffers if you manage your time with the same Libra precision that you apply to your relationships. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 6th house. This can intensify the work environment, create friction with a colleague or competitor, or add physical strain to your health routines. There may be confrontations in your professional or daily environment that require real energy to manage. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding confusion to workplace communication and small but potentially significant details in daily work. Keep close attention on the accuracy of your work and communications. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 9th house, throughout this transit. Jupiter in the 9th house is one of the most supportive placements possible. It brings good fortune, meaningful travel, a connection to wisdom and teachings, and a general sense of things flowing in alignment with your deeper values. This Jupiter transit in the 9th house provides real grace and optimism as a background energy, and it acts as a genuine fortune support during this entire Venus transit. The sense that life is fundamentally working in the right direction, even when daily logistics are demanding, comes from Jupiter here. Overall, this Venus transit through your 7th house is one of the most personally meaningful periods of the year for Libra individuals. Relationships, marriage, and professional partnerships are all illuminated with warmth, beauty, and genuine potential. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th adds both authority and complexity to close partnerships. This is a period where your natural gift for relationship and harmony finds strong support, and the connections you tend to carefully during this window can become some of the most significant in your life. For Scorpio, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 6th house until April 19th. The 6th house governs daily work and service, health routines, debts, competition and enemies, colleagues, and the practical structures that hold your day together. It is not traditionally the most comfortable place for Venus, but it carries its own distinct and productive quality. For Scorpio individuals, Venus rules your 7th house of marriage, partnerships, and contracts, as well as your 12th house of expenses, foreign connections, and hidden matters. When Venus transits the 6th house, the themes of partnership, hidden connections, and daily service all become interlinked in ways that require attention. When Venus moves through your 6th house, your work environment becomes more pleasant and manageable. There is a greater natural diplomacy in how you handle colleagues, a softer approach to competitive situations, and a real ability to resolve interpersonal difficulties at work with grace. If you have been dealing with a difficult colleague or a competitive dynamic in your professional environment, Venus in the 6th gives you the social intelligence and charm to navigate those situations more effectively than usual. People respond better to you in the workplace, and the general atmosphere around your daily work improves noticeably. Since Venus rules your 7th house while transiting the 6th, your partner or significant other may become more connected to your daily routines during this period. A partner may show interest in your work, get involved in your health habits, or bring a relationship dimension into the practical fabric of your daily life. For some Scorpio individuals, a workplace connection with personal overtones may also surface during this transit. Be clear about the boundaries that serve you best in those situations, especially given the 12th house dimension Venus also carries, which adds a private and sometimes complicated quality to any Venus-ruled connections that emerge. From a health perspective, Venus in the 6th house brings a gentler and more aesthetically motivated approach to your physical well-being. You are more drawn to health routines that also feel pleasant and sustainable, whether that involves diet, beauty practices, gentle movement, or rest. Adopting or refining health habits during this period feels more natural than it usually does, and the improvements you make now can stick because they are genuinely enjoyable rather than forced. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 6th house. The exalted Sun in the 6th house is actually a strong and productive placement for competition and dealing with obstacles. The Sun here gives the strength to face challenges directly and come out ahead, and because it is exalted, that quality is at maximum force. You are less likely to be pushed around, more capable of holding your ground, and more naturally positioned to win any competitive situation you find yourself in during this window. If you have been up against a difficult competitor, a persistent adversary, or a legal or work-related challenge, this period carries real power to shift those dynamics in your favor. From a health perspective, the exalted Sun joining Venus in the 6th house adds vitality and physical resilience to this period. Energy levels are higher, and the combination of Sun and Venus here means that both the strength to handle challenges and the discipline to maintain good health routines are working together. If there have been ongoing health matters, this window may bring a noticeable improvement, or at least a clearer path forward. Saturn is in Pisces, your 5th house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn in the 5th house brings a seriousness and deliberate quality to romance, creativity, and anything connected to children or speculative ventures. Romance during this period feels less spontaneous and more considered. Creative work requires real effort and structure to produce results worth keeping. Saturn in the 5th house is asking you to build something lasting in these areas rather than chasing easy pleasures. The pleasant social quality that Venus in the 6th house offers at work is somewhat counterbalanced by the more restrained 5th house Saturn, making personal joy and romance feel more effortful. Mars, your co-ruling planet, moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 5th house. This combination can create frustration in a romantic situation, creative blocks, or tension involving children or a younger person who matters to you. Mars and Saturn in the 5th house together have a quality of ambition and desire meeting restriction, which is uncomfortable but ultimately productive if channeled into disciplined creative work. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding mental restlessness and creative confusion to the 5th house from that point. Avoid making dramatic changes to creative projects based on unclear thinking. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 8th house, throughout this transit. Jupiter in the 8th house brings growth through transformation and unexpected financial gains through joint resources, investment, or inheritance. For Scorpio individuals, Jupiter ruling your 2nd and 5th houses while transiting the 8th means there is a theme of financial depth and creative transformation running beneath the surface. This 8th house Jupiter provides genuine wisdom about the deeper dimensions of money and transformation that supports your overall decision-making during this period. Overall, this Venus transit through your 6th house is a period of practical engagement, workplace diplomacy, and health improvement. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th gives you a genuine competitive edge and physical vitality that can turn challenging situations in your favor. Engage the work and health dimensions of this transit fully. The quality of your daily effort during this window lays a foundation that becomes visible in the months that follow. For Sagittarius, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 5th house until April 19th. The 5th house is one of the most joyful and personally expressive houses in the chart. It governs romance, creativity, artistic expression, children, students, speculation, past life merit, and the things that bring genuine pleasure and inspiration. When Venus moves through this house, it activates a naturally fertile and enjoyable quality of life. For Sagittarius individuals, Venus rules your 6th house of daily work, health, and service, as well as your 11th house of income, gains, and social networks. When Venus is in your 5th house, romance takes focus. If you are single, this is one of the most favorable windows of the year for meeting someone who genuinely excites you. The 5th house Venus creates attractions that feel joyful, natural, and mutual. New romantic encounters during this period carry a quality of ease and delight that is relatively rare. If you are in a committed relationship, this is a window for rekindling the playful and romantic dimension of your connection. Date nights, creative activities together, openly expressing your feelings, and sharing pleasures you both enjoy carry more emotional resonance during this transit. Do not let the Sagittarius tendency to move quickly past feelings deprive you of what this transit is offering. The creative dimension of the 5th house is also strongly activated by Venus here. If you write, make music, paint, design, teach, or work in any expressive field, this period can be one of your most inspired. Ideas flow with more ease, aesthetic choices feel more confident, and what you produce carries a genuine quality of beauty and personal authenticity. This is not the time to hold back creative expression out of perfectionism or doubt. Venus in the 5th house rewards those who actually put something out into the world. Since Venus rules your 11th house of gains while transiting the 5th house of creativity and speculation, there is a meaningful financial thread to this period. Projects born from genuine inspiration during this transit have a higher than usual chance of producing financial rewards eventually. Creative ventures taken on with care and real skill during this window carry favorable energy. That said, the 5th house also governs speculation, and while Venus here makes risk feel appealing, moderation is still appropriate. The gains come through genuine creative work and real effort, not through shortcuts. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 5th house. This is a powerful and genuinely celebratory combination for creative confidence, romantic expression, and personal joy. The exalted Sun in the 5th house shines with pride, playfulness, and a deep desire to create and express. Combined with Venus, this window from April 14th to April 19th has a quality of radiant personal energy that is hard to manufacture artificially. If you have been holding back an important creative expression, an honest declaration of feeling, or a project you have been wanting to launch, this is the window where that expression can flow naturally and land with real impact. This conjunction also supports your relationship with children or young people strongly. If you are a teacher, mentor, parent, or coach, the quality of your connection and influence during this window is particularly high. Saturn is in Pisces, your 4th house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn in the 4th house brings heaviness and responsibility to your home environment. You may be dealing with a property matter, a demanding situation involving your mother, or a general feeling that your domestic environment requires more effort to maintain than it gives back. This 4th house Saturn runs as a background undercurrent throughout this transit, and means that even as Venus lights up your 5th house with creative and romantic energy, your home life may feel less restful and stable than you would like. Do not let the 4th house weight drain the 5th house. Joy. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 4th house. This combination can create domestic tension, arguments at home, or a physically charged atmosphere in your living environment during the first 2 weeks of April. The contrast between Venus in the 5th house offering creative and romantic joy and Mars and Saturn together in the 4th house creating pressure at home is one of the central tensions of this transit for Sagittarius. Be deliberate about where you put your energy. The home conflicts are real but not necessarily as significant as they feel in the moment. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding communication confusion in domestic settings and muddying any home-related decisions that need clear thinking. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 7th house, throughout this transit. For Sagittarius, Jupiter ruling your 1st and 4th houses while transiting the 7th brings genuine wisdom and generosity to your most important partnerships. A partner may be particularly supportive, expansive in their thinking, or instrumental in opening doors for you during this period. Jupiter in the 7th house also tends to support meaningful relationship commitments, taking a positive step forward. This is a genuinely favorable influence on your partnerships throughout this whole Venus transit, and provides a meaningful counterbalance to the 4th house pressure from Saturn and Mars. Overall, this Venus transit through your 5th house is a beautiful and creative period for Sagittarius individuals. Romance, artistic expression, personal joy, and genuine inspiration are all highlighted. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th elevates the energy of this house to its fullest potential. Handle the 4th house cluster of Saturn, Mars, and Mercury with patience in your home environment, and do not let those tensions eat into the creative and romantic gifts Venus is offering through the 5th house. Jupiter in the 7th house supports your partnerships throughout. Lean into what this transit is genuinely offering. For Capricorn, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 4th house until April 19th. The 4th house is the house of home, your domestic environment, your mother, property and real estate, emotional foundations, and the private inner life that you do not always show the world. When Venus moves through this house, it brings a nurturing, comfortable, and aesthetically pleasing quality to your home life and inner world. For Capricorn individuals, Venus rules your 5th house of romance, creativity, children, and intelligence, as well as your 10th house of career and public reputation. The connection between your home environment and your professional identity, and between domestic harmony and creative expression, becomes meaningfully active during this transit. From the moment this Venus transit begins, your home becomes a genuine source of comfort and beauty. You feel more motivated to beautify your living space, invest in your domestic environment, or simply bring more care and attention to the places where you live. Purchasing something for the home, rearranging a space, or adding something beautiful to your surroundings during this period gives real satisfaction. Attending to the aesthetic quality of your home environment is not frivolous during a Venus in 4th transit. It is a natural and productive expression of what this placement is offering. Your relationship with your mother or a maternal figure is also touched by this transit. There may be warmer, more loving interactions, a desire to nurture the people closest to you at home, or simply a greater awareness of the emotional foundation your family provides. The fourth house is tied to your sense of belonging and safety, and Venus here makes those foundations feel more beautiful and appreciated. Since Venus rules your 10th house of career while transiting the 4th, the home environment becomes relevant to your professional life in a meaningful way. Work-from-home arrangements feel particularly harmonious and productive right now. Creative ideas that emerge from a domestic or private setting may turn out to be professionally relevant. The connection between your inner life and your outer professional identity is being quietly aligned, and paying attention to what surfaces at home during this transit can produce insights that serve your career in the months ahead. Real estate and property matters are also highlighted by Venus in the 4th house. If you have been thinking about buying, selling, renovating, or making any significant change to your living situation, Venus in the 4th is a favorable time to explore those conversations. Negotiations around property tend to go more smoothly when Venus occupies the 4th house. The aesthetic quality of a home, its comfort, and the emotional resonance of a space will matter more to you than usual during this period, and trusting those instincts is appropriate. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 4th house. This brings a strong and somewhat ceremonial energy to your home and family environment. The exalted Sun in the 4th house represents authority and prominence in the domestic sphere. Family decisions may center around this window, or a father figure or senior family member may become particularly influential. The combination of Venus and the exalted Sun in the 4th house from April 14th to April 19th creates an atmosphere of both beauty and authority in your private life. Family gatherings, significant domestic decisions, or a meaningful personal event at home may all take shape around this period. There is a quality of wanting your home to reflect both comfort and dignity during this conjunction, and investing in that is appropriate. Saturn is in Pisces, your 3rd house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn is your own ruling planet, and its presence in the 3rd house brings discipline and careful intent to your communication, short-distance travel, skill development, and relationship with siblings. For this Venus transit, the 3rd house Saturn means that your communication style is more deliberate and less casual than usual, which actually serves you well in any important conversation about home or property that Venus in the 4th brings to the surface. The two work together in this respect, Saturn making you careful and thorough, Venus making the outcomes more harmonious. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your 3rd house. This combination can create friction in communication, arguments with siblings, or a sense of being pulled in too many directions in your immediate environment. Where Saturn in the 3rd was creating careful, measured speech, Mars here adds heat and urgency that can tip into aggression if not managed. Be particularly mindful of written and spoken communication with siblings or close neighbors. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, further complicating communication clarity. Review all written communication carefully before sending during this period, particularly anything related to home, property, or family matters. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 6th house, throughout this transit. Jupiter in the 6th house brings a broad and generous quality to your ability to manage daily work, handle competition, and maintain your health. It can also bring opportunity through service-oriented work and tends to expand the scope of your daily responsibilities in a productive rather than burdensome way. For this Venus transit, Jupiter in the 6th provides a stable and practical support structure in your work and health routines that runs as a background influence even as Venus focuses your attention on the home and family sphere. Overall, this Venus transit through your 4th house is a warm, domestically enriching, and emotionally grounding period for Capricorn individuals. Your home environment becomes a genuine source of beauty and comfort. Property matters receive favorable energy. The connection between your private life and your professional identity is being quietly aligned. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th adds family authority and ceremonial significance to your domestic sphere. Use this transit to invest in your foundations, both literally in your home and emotionally in your family connections. For Aquarius, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your 3rd house until April 19th. The 3rd house governs communication in all its forms, courage and initiative, short-distance travel, siblings, skill and craftsmanship, and the bold individual effort you put forward through your own will. When Venus moves through the 3rd house, it brings an appealing, creative, and persuasive quality to how you express yourself. For Aquarius individuals, Venus rules your 4th house of home, emotional foundations, and property, as well as your 9th house of fortune, higher learning, and your connection to guiding wisdom. From the start of this Venus transit, your communication becomes more charming, persuasive, and naturally appealing. You may find yourself more drawn to writing, speaking, media work, teaching, or any form of crafting something through skill and expression. Ideas flow more easily. The right words come more naturally. Your ability to connect with others through language and presentation is at its seasonal best. This is an excellent period for content creation, pitching ideas, client presentations, negotiations, or any professional activity where the quality of your communication is central to the outcome. Your relationship with siblings may warm and become more genuinely engaged during this period. If there has been distance or tension with a sibling, Venus in the 3rd house can soften that and open the door to more pleasant interaction. Collaborative work with siblings or close peers is also favored. Short-distance travel is highlighted as well. A brief trip taken during this transit, whether for pleasure, creative exploration, or work, may carry a quality of beauty or genuine enjoyment that makes it stand out. Since Venus rules your 9th house of fortune while transiting the 3rd house of individual effort and courage, your bold personal actions during this period carry the quiet blessing of fortune. The 3rd and 9th houses form a natural axis, and Venus activating this axis through the 3rd means that sincere, courageous, skillful effort in your chosen direction is supported by a real undercurrent of grace. Do not hold back. Venus in the 3rd house rewards those who actually speak, act, create, and express. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your 3rd house. This conjunction brings remarkable boldness and confidence to your personal initiative and communication. The exalted Sun in the 3rd house is about the force of your own effort, your courage, and your ability to assert yourself powerfully and effectively. Combined with Venus, you have both the confidence and the charm to make a genuinely strong impression through your words and personal initiative during this window. If there is something you have been wanting to express, a project you have been waiting to launch, or a key communication you have been delaying, this period is the moment to move. There may also be recognition or acknowledgement of your skills and initiative during this period. People in your environment and professional sphere take genuine notice of what you bring forward around this time. Saturn is in Pisces, your 2nd house, throughout this Venus transit. Saturn is your own ruling planet, and its presence in the 2nd house brings financial discipline and careful resource management to the backdrop of this transit. The creativity and communication momentum that Venus offers through the 3rd house is real, but Saturn in the 2nd house means that financial results from that effort may arrive more slowly than expected, and spending needs to remain thoughtful. Family communication may also carry a more serious tone during this period. These are not warning signs. They are Saturn asking you to be responsible and honest with your material resources, which is appropriate context for any creative or communicative push. Venus in the 3rd is encouraging. Mars was in Aquarius with Rahu in your 1st house until April 2nd, a period of personal intensity and driven energy in your identity and approach. On April 2nd, Mars moves into Pisces, entering your 2nd house alongside Saturn. This shift brings financial pressure and potential family tension into focus. Mars and Saturn together in the 2nd house can create stress around money, conflict in family financial matters, or a tendency to speak more harshly than intended in close family settings. The Mercury transit into Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state adds confusion to financial thinking and family communication. Be careful with financial decisions and family conversations that require precision during this period, and avoid impulsive spending driven by emotional rather than practical reasoning. The tension between the communicative and creative confidence Venus is offering through the 3rd house and the financial caution Saturn and Mars are requiring through the 2nd house is the central dynamic of this transit for Aquarius individuals. The way to resolve that tension productively is to let Venus fuel your creative and communicative output, while Saturn keeps your financial management disciplined. Jupiter is in Gemini, your 5th house, throughout this transit. Jupiter in the 5th house supports creative work, romance, and speculative ventures with wisdom and expansive energy. For Aquarius, Jupiter ruling your 2nd and 11th houses while transiting the 5th means there is a meaningful connection between creative output and financial return that is building in the background. Your creative work during this Venus transit may well produce the seeds of income that Jupiter in the 5th house develops over the coming months. This is a genuinely positive and supportive influence on your creative and romantic life throughout this period. Overall, this Venus transit through your third house is a period of creative confidence, expressive charm, and courageous personal initiative. Your communication is at its most magnetic. Your skills receive genuine support. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th creates a peak window for bold expression and purposeful action that should not be wasted. This is a period where your voice and your courage are genuinely among your most powerful assets. Use them. For Pisces, Venus enters Aries on March 26th and transits your second house until April 19th. The second house governs accumulated wealth, your family, and those closest to you by blood, the quality of your speech and voice, food and material pleasures, your face and eyes, and the resources that give you stability in daily life. When Venus moves through this house, it brings a pleasant and productive quality to all of these areas. For Pisces individuals, Venus rules your third house of communication, courage, and skill, as well as your eighth house of transformation, shared finances, and hidden matters. From the start of this transit, your finances receive a genuine and pleasant boost. The second house is the house of accumulation, and Venus moving through it tends to bring money in and increase your desire to enjoy material comforts. This is a good period to focus on income-generating activities, to negotiate financial arrangements, or to invest in something of lasting material value. Your natural sense of what is worth your money improves during this transit, and your aesthetic judgment in purchases tends to be sound. Trust those instincts when they feel genuine rather than impulsive. Your relationship with your family, particularly those in your immediate household or bloodline, warms noticeably during Venus in the second house. Family gatherings, shared meals, or simply the pleasure of being around loved ones carries more satisfaction than usual. If there have been tensions within the family, Venus in the second house can smooth things over through goodwill and a genuine desire for harmony. This is a good window to have conversations that needed warmth and patience to land well. Your speech and voice also benefit from Venus in the second house. Words come with more charm, warmth, and natural persuasiveness during this period. People are more receptive to what you say and how you say it. This quality is useful in professional negotiations, sales conversations, creative writing, or any situation where the quality of your words directly influences the outcome. Use it deliberately. Since Venus rules your eighth house while transiting the second, there is a financial dimension involving other people's resources running alongside your personal income. Gains through joint finances, a partner's income, inheritance, investment returns, or shared assets are all possible during this period. The second and eighth house axis together creates a meaningful flow of financial energy in both directions, so while gains through shared resources are possible, be equally clear about financial commitments involving others. On April 14th, the Sun enters Aries in its exalted state and joins Venus in your second house. The exalted Sun in the second house brings financial authority, a strong sense of self-worth connected to your material foundation, and the ability to command financial situations with real confidence. You may find yourself more assertive about money during this period, more willing to hold your ground in financial conversations, and more capable of projecting the kind of presence that attracts material respect. If you need to negotiate a salary, close a deal, make a significant family-related financial request, or simply have a conversation about money that has been difficult to initiate, this is the window where you have both the warmth and the force to do it effectively. Saturn is transiting Pisces, your first house, throughout this entire Venus transit period. This is a significant and demanding placement. Saturn in the first house brings heaviness to your overall life experience, a greater awareness of your limitations, and a persistent sense that life requires more effort and patience before it gets easier. Physical energy may feel lower than usual. Your personality takes on a more serious quality. This Saturn transit through your first house is building genuine depth and resilience, but during the window of this Venus transit, it means that the financial and family warmth Venus is producing in the second house is accompanied by a personal tiredness or inner weight. Honor both. Do not push so hard on the financial opportunities of Venus in the second that you ignore what your body and inner life are asking for. Mars moves into Pisces on April 2nd, joining Saturn in your first house. Mars and Saturn together in your first house can create physical tension, frustrated energy that has nowhere productive to go, or a sense of being simultaneously driven and blocked in your personal life. This combination can also make you more reactive or irritable than usual in personal interactions. Be aware of that tendency and choose your moments carefully. Channel physical energy through exercise and deliberate activity rather than letting it build up into frustration. Mercury enters Pisces on April 11th in a debilitated state, adding mental fog and difficulty making clear decisions to the first house from that point. The contrast between the pleasant financial and family energy Venus is producing in your second house and the demanding personal energy the first house cluster of Saturn, Mars, and Mercury is creating is the central dynamic of this transit for Pisces individuals. The way through it is to allow Venus to do its good work in your finances and family sphere while being patient and physically careful with yourself during the more draining first house transits. Jupiter is in Gemini, your fourth house, throughout this transit. Jupiter is your own ruling planet, and its transit through the fourth house brings expansive energy to your home environment. Your domestic life carries a quality of comfort and growth during this Jupiter transit. Your relationship with your mother or the maternal figures in your life tends to be supportive and positive. Overall, this Venus transit through your second house is a financially and domestically meaningful period for Pisces individuals. Your resources, your voice, and your family connections all benefit from Venus energy during this window. The exalted Sun joining Venus from April 14th adds authority and financial confidence in a real and practical way. This is a period to tend to your finances and your family relationships with focused attention and appreciation. The support is there for both. As we conclude this episode, please keep in mind that these insights are based on the sidereal zodiac system used in Vedic astrology, which differs from the tropical system by approximately 24 degrees. These are general predictions. The real impact depends on your dasha cycles and your individual birth chart. For a personalized analysis or consultation, feel free to reach out. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now, you can also hype this video to boost it within the community. Your support helps this knowledge reach more people who may benefit. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, keep learning, and keep shining bright.